Welcome back to Become Your Child's Best Teacher. I'm Jennifer Ransom, and I help families understand the latest educational practices and research so they can support their children's learning at home and in school. Now, have you ever asked yourself, how should I be reading with my children at home? What books do I choose? How often do I read? What questions should I be asking? How do I help them improve their learning skills and reading skills at home? Well, that's what this video is all about. So, stay tuned. So, I had to do the exact same thing when working with my students in the classroom. I had to figure out what books I should choose, how I should systematically teach them reading, how do I work on reading comprehension, what questions should I be asking them. And so I ended up experimenting, to be completely honest. I was sitting there going, okay, so let me choose a book. And I knew from my childhood that repeated reading was something that was really big in terms of my own success in terms of reading. So as a child, there was a book that I absolutely love that I will share with you right now. It's called Old Bear. And my mom and dad read this to me over and over and over. It was my favorite book, and I ended up memorizing the book and being able to read it back to them even with the amount of text in this book. So at a very, very young age, 3 or 4. And so I sat there and said, all right, how do I help my students with special needs understand that reading is important and that repeated over and over practice, maybe that'll help them as it did me, right? So each week I choose a title. And in thinking about choosing a title, I decide, okay, what illustrations will grab them right away? Especially with young learners, you want to be able to grab them in with the illustration. I know there's a myth out there, you don't judge a book by its cover, but children do for the most part. So start getting them excited about reading through illustrations. Let me show you one of those examples right now. So the books I'm showing you right now, I will put the title, author, and ISBN in the description below, so you can check them out at your local library or check them out on Amazon if you'd like to. So Under the Sea, this is a really cool book and very realistic. It has very colorful pictures and gets kids talking about nonfiction and how the sea functions, how the animals work together, what the environment is like, and so on. So a really cool way, especially if kids are really visually engaged, they're going to be really excited. And even look at the text. It's flowing, it's in movement, it shows you that there's movement going on in the water. So really cool way to express that to children through a book. So during repeated reading in my classroom, for instance, I read the same book throughout the entire week. Now that means I read it as a read aloud. So that would be, I'm holding up the book, I'm reading through all the pages, I'm asking particular questions. I'll get to the questioning part later about how I choose questions and which questions are the most important. But I read through the book pretty quickly, to be honest, only pausing a little bit in between each page. And then what I do is after that, I break up into groups in my classroom. So at home, this would be picking a specific place. So if you're reading in bed, this is perfect. So right before bed, you're sitting there reading with your child, and then after you read the book once, you go back through the book and you're pointing out specific things and asking questions. When you're working with young children and starting all the way up, you want to do the WH questions. So start with the question what first. So pointing out what is this, that type of thing. So making direct connections to pictures in the book or words in the book. And then you'll gradually move up from there. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Another way for young children is repeated rhythms. So something like a Dr. Seuss, where they hear the rhythm, they can hear the same endings of words. So talking about rhyming and things like that, that helps build language very, very quickly and sticks in their head, just kind of like song lyrics do in our own heads. So I know I sing a lot in regard to myself as well. So let's see, what else? Another book here in terms of questioning. So I want to talk more about how you should focus your questioning and ways to level it for your children, right? So at first you're working on what questions. So what is this? It's a dinosaur, right? So start very short, but then from then on you're going to ask who. So asking who questions, focusing on I and him, her, those types of pronouns, as well as names in a book. So identifying those are really, really important. And then the next question would be where, like where are they? Where is this taking place? Something like that. Where did they live? What did they need to eat? Where they lived? Things like that. So you can then backtrack and put the what questions back in as you continue to work on more complex. So you're mixing up the questioning as you move on. So you want to go back and make sure you work on the what and the who and work on when. Okay, so keep building yourself up. After when, then you're going to work on, after where, then you're going to work on when, and how. How is the last question? So how is this all happening? How did the dinosaurs exist? What were they? What did they need in their environment? How did they work together? How did they get food? Things of those sorts. So really graduating your questioning from what all the way up to how. And a lot of those how questions would be great for that, for this book I have. It's called I Face the Wind. Great teacher at my school recommended this book to me and the rest of our staff during a staff meeting. And really exciting because it not only talks about the wind in a way that young children can understand, but also does the how. So how do we understand the wind? Well, here are some different experiments that you can try to be able to visually show your children what the wind is about and how you can understand the wind when it's something that we can't really see. What's the evidence? Flags moving, things of that sort. So very cool book. And then you also, when choosing a book, if your children are really interested in history or in particularly older students who are deciding, okay, I want to learn about U.S. history, for instance. This is a really cool book. It just came out this year, and it talks about women's rights. So really cool illustrations in here as well. So the read-aloud and picture books are not just for young children. They're great to be reading with your children through middle school. There are so much you can learn in terms of breaking down a subject into simpler topics and understanding them through a picture book style, and then graduating into reading magazines, looking at other research, and things of that sort. So check out this book, really, really cool. And then after questioning, you want to focus on a lot of genres. So I've given you a lot of different ones. We want to focus more on nonfiction. That's one of the myths. So when we were children, we focused on a lot of fiction, right? We were reading a ton of Dr. Seuss. We were reading a ton of those classic fairy tales, right? They teach a lot of great lessons, which is amazing, but you also need to vary your genres so that students are understanding that reading is for many purposes. So even magazines, reading online, learning that reading is different based on what context you're reading in. So this one is another great book. It's poetry, and it talks about different areas of the world and the different wonders that you can find out about those particular areas that you didn't even know. And it has really great visuals as well, exploring different parts of the world, a guide to the world, and talking about and different types of poetry as well. Really exciting, and children in that rhythmic pattern and understanding how words can be used in different ways to give a different message is a great way to show them different genres and ways to write as well as read. Let's see, anything else? Ooh, I can't forget this book. This is one of my favorites. My mom actually brought this back from Australia, and it's called The Lizard Gang. And just the point that I want to make with this book is that exposing children to other cultures, other parts of the world, through books is so, so important. Yes, we have the news, we have all these kinds of things out there on video, but we want something where children are getting to explore it through literature first, and then broadening and making those connections, and going further. Books are a great start to that. So, after all of this, what should you be doing? First, you need to choose your environment. So whether that's happening in bed, at the counter, on the floor of the bedroom, where is this reading happening? And where's this reading going to happen? And it needs to happen at the same time every night. So, or every day. Not just reading at night, read all the time. It's a great leisure skill to teach your kids as well. When you have free time and things like that, reading is a great way to open up your mind and learn different things, as well as explore different places, right? We can go so many different places just through a book. So choose your environment. Second, choose your text. Focus on illustrations at first when you're working with young children, and also your word level. So when you're working with young children, you want more simple language and fewer unknown words. And then as you build up, that's when you decide the complexity level, right? So your book shouldn't be so challenging that your child is disengaging, but it should be challenging enough that you can help them talk through meanings of new words, as well as attach those to illustrations in the story. Next is repeated reading. So that means reading a story over and over with your children, at least for a week at a time. That way, when you get to, towards the end of the week, they're able to retell the story to you. They're identifying those new words pretty consistently. And they're more enthralled, they're more confident, right? Next is questioning. So make sure you're focusing on simple questions first. And as you build up, you're reviewing all those other questions. Start with what, then who, where, when, then how, okay, in terms of complexity. And lastly, encourage reading of all genres, reading magazines, reading different types of books, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and reading for different purposes. Children need to understand that when you're reading a magazine article for leisure, you're reading it differently than you're reading a textbook for research information. So I hope you found this training helpful, and please look below in the comments to see all the book titles, and so you can check them out on your own. And happy reading. Oh my gosh, so exciting. Reading is a great way to open your children up to the world of learning. So I look forward to hearing how it goes for you at home, and just go for it. Try books with your kids, get them enthralled, get them excited, do it consistently. All right, until next time, love deeply, teach daily, and grow drastically.